The Vance mansion sat on top of a hill, surrounded by tall black gates. It was a beautiful place, but it felt like a museum, not a home. There was no laughter inside, only the quiet sound of footsteps on expensive rugs. My patient was Arthur Vance, a 70-year-old billionaire who had suffered a severe stroke. He could not speak, and he could not move his right side. He could only watch the world with his sharp, intelligent eyes. "Take good care of him, Clara," his wife Evelyn told me on my first day. Evelyn was 35, beautiful, and always wore diamonds. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. She looked at her sick husband not with love, but like a person waiting for a train to arrive. She was waiting for him to die. My routine was the same every day. I checked Arthur's heart rate, gave him his medicine, and read the business news to him. Even though he could not speak, I knew he understood everything. When I read about his company's success, his eyes glowed. When Evelyn entered the room, his heart monitor started to beep faster. It wasn't because of love, it was because of fear. One rainy evening around midnight, I walked down the dark hallway to bring Arthur his late-night medication. The house was completely silent. As I approached the master bedroom, I saw the door was open a few inches. A warm light spilled onto the floor. I was about to knock, but then I heard Evelyn's voice. She wasn't talking to herself. "He won't last another month," she whispered loudly. "The doctor changed his prescription today. Once the new medicine is in his system, we just have to wait. The entire Vance fortune will be ours, Julian." My breath caught in my throat. Julian? That was the name of Arthur's estranged son from his first marriage, the man Arthur had removed from his will years ago. Evelyn was working with the enemy. I stepped closer to the crack in the door and looked inside. Evelyn was holding a small brown glass bottle, one that did not come from the hospital. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood in the dark hallway. Evelyn was still on the phone, laughing softly with Julian. I carefully stepped backward, making sure my rubber-soled nurse shoes made no sound on the marble floor. I entered Arthur's room and closed the door behind me. I looked at the old man lying in the bed. His eyes were wide open, staring at me. He had heard his wife's loud whispers through the wall. A single tear rolled down his pale cheek. He knew. He knew his wife was trying to kill him, and he was completely helpless. "I won't let her do it, Mr. Vance," I whispered, walking to his bedside and wiping the tear away. "I am going to protect you, but we need proof." The next morning, I went to a small electronics store in the city during my 2-hour break. I bought a tiny spy camera hidden inside a standard digital alarm clock. When I returned to the mansion, I placed the clock on the nightstand right next to Arthur's bed. It pointed directly at the medicine tray. 2 days passed without any incident. Evelyn barely entered the room, spending most of her time shopping or talking on the phone in the garden. But on Thursday night, the house grew cold and quiet again. At 1 a.m., the heavy wooden door to Arthur's bedroom creaked open. I was pretending to sleep on the small sofa in the corner of the room, my eyes pulled nearly shut. Evelyn walked in, wearing a long silk robe. She didn't look at her husband. She walked straight to the medicine tray. She pulled the small brown glass bottle from her pocket. With steady, practiced hands, she opened Arthur's liquid heart medication and poured 5 drops of the clear liquid inside. "Sweet dreams, Arthur," she murmured to the dark room. She turned and left. The moment the door clicked shut, I jumped off the sofa. I ran to the alarm clock and pulled out the tiny memory card. I plugged it into my phone. The video was crystal clear. I had her. I had the perfect evidence of Evelyn Vance trying to poison her husband. But as I looked at Arthur, whose eyes were filled with terror, I realized something. If I went to the police right now, Julian and Evelyn's expensive lawyers might find a loophole. I needed to know exactly what was in that brown bottle, and I needed Julian to show his face at the mansion. The next morning, I did something very dangerous. When Evelyn wasn't looking, I took the poisoned liquid heart medication and poured it into an empty vitamin bottle. Then I replaced it with a fresh, safe bottle of the exact same medicine from the pharmacy. Arthur would receive his real treatment, but Evelyn would think her plan was working. I walked over to Arthur and leaned in close. "She thinks you are taking the poison, Mr. Vance. You are safe, but we must play a game. You need to look weaker every day. Can you do that for me?" Arthur closed his eyes once, our secret signal for yes. Over the next week, I played my part perfectly. When Evelyn came into the room, I acted worried. I told her Arthur's pulse was dropping. I told her he was sleeping too much. Evelyn hid a smile behind her expensive leather purse. "Oh, poor Arthur," she sighed, acting sad. "I suppose his old heart is finally giving up. I should call his son Julian. They need to say goodbye even if they don't get along." That evening, a sleek sports car pulled up the long driveway. Through the window, I saw a tall man step out. He wore a tailored suit and sunglasses at night. It was Julian Vance. He looked exactly like the type of man who spent money he didn't earn. Evelyn met him in the grand foyer. I stood at the top of the stairs, hidden by the shadows of the marble pillars. "Is it done?" Julian whispered, grabbing Evelyn's hands. "Almost," Evelyn replied, her voice filled with excitement. "The nurse says he won't survive the weekend. Once he passes, the lawyers will read the old will. But since we created the new marriage contract, I get 50%, and you get the rest. We finally won, Julian." Julian laughed, a harsh, arrogant sound that echoed through the empty house. The old man thought he could cut me out of his life. Now I'm taking everything he built. They had no idea that I was recording their conversation on my phone from the top of the stairs. I didn't just have video of Evelyn anymore. I had audio of the conspiracy. I had both of them trapped in my net. But I wasn't finished. I didn't just want to hand them over to the police. I wanted Arthur to see his revenge happen in real time. The Billionaire's Nurse. Part 4. The Trap is Set. The next afternoon, the atmosphere in the mansion was thick with anticipation. Julian stayed in the guest house, drinking Arthur's expensive wine, while Evelyn walked through the corridors, looking at the paintings as if she already owned them. I knew it was time to make my final move. I called Dr. Harrison, Arthur's primary physician. He was a good man, completely loyal to Arthur for over 30 years. "Dr. Harrison," I said over the phone, my voice urgent, "you need to come to the Vance estate immediately. Bring the family lawyer, Mr. Vance's legal team, and 2 plainclothes police officers. Do not tell Evelyn." "What is going on, Clara?" the doctor asked, sounding deeply concerned. "Arthur is in grave danger," I replied. "I have undeniable proof of a conspiracy to end his life. Please hurry." While the doctor was on his way, I went into Arthur's room. I pulled out the small brown bottle containing the poisoned medicine that I had saved. I placed it inside a plastic bag to preserve the fingerprints. I looked at Arthur. his eyes tracking my every movement. "Today is the day, Mr. Vance," I said softly, checking his pulse. "They think this is your last day. We are going to show them it is actually their last day of freedom." At 4 p.m., Evelyn and Julian entered the room together. They didn't even knock. Julian walked over to his father's bed, looking down at the old man with a cruel smile. "Well, old man," Julian said, adjusting his watch, "you look terrible. You should have been nicer to me when you had the chance. Now look at you, silent, weak, and completely alone." "He isn't alone, Julian," I said, stepping forward from the shadows of the room. Evelyn frowned, looking irritated by my presence. "Clara, pack your things. Your services are no longer required. We will handle my husband's comfort from here on out." "I don't think so, Mrs. Vance," I said, holding up my smartphone, "because if I leave, this video goes straight to the district attorney." I pressed play. The video of Evelyn dropping poison into Arthur's medicine bottle filled the screen. The room became deathly quiet. Evelyn's face went from pale to completely white, and Julian's arrogant smile instantly vanished. The billionaire's nurse. Part 5. The final trap. Julian was the first to break the silence. He lunged toward me, his hands reaching for my phone. "Give me that!" he shouted, his face twisted with rage. But before he could touch me, the heavy bedroom door swung open. Dr. Harrison stepped inside, followed by two men in dark suits, the plainclothes police officers, and Mr. Henderson, Arthur's longtime estate lawyer. "Step back, young man," one of the officers said, drawing his badge. Evelyn dropped her leather purse. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, her gold lipstick rolling across the rug. "It's a lie!" she screamed, her voice shaking violently. "The nurse is setting us up. She made that video using AI. It's fake." "Is this fake too, Mrs. Vance?" I asked smoothly. I pulled the sealed plastic bag containing the brown glass bottle from my medical kit. "This is the poison you used. Your fingerprints are all over it. And the real medicine, it's completely safe. I switched them a week ago. Your husband never took a single drop of your poison." Evelyn looked at Arthur. For the last 2 weeks, he had played the role of a dying man perfectly. Now he sat up in bed. He didn't look weak anymore. He looked like the powerful billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. He looked directly at his son and his wife with absolute disgust. Mr. Henderson, the lawyer, stepped forward and opened a leather folder. "Evelyn, according to the prenuptial agreement you signed, any attempt to harm or neglect your husband instantly invalidates your marriage contract. You get nothing. No mansion, no allowance, and no shares." He then turned to Julian. "And Julian, your father has officially signed a new directive. You are completely barred from entering any Vance property, and the police have a copy of the audio recording Clara made of your conspiracy. You are both going to jail." The police officers stepped forward and clicked the heavy silver handcuffs around Evelyn's and Julian's wrists. Julian glared at me, his eyes full of venom. "You ruined my life, you stupid nurse," he hissed. "No," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You ruined your own life the moment you decided to hurt a helpless man. Now please clear your schedule. You have a very long court date." As the police led them out of the house, the grand mansion suddenly felt lighter. The dark clouds outside seemed to clear, letting a beam of evening sunlight enter the bedroom windows. Arthur looked at me, and a genuine smile finally broke across his face. He lifted his left hand and gave me a firm thumbs up. We had won. 6 months passed after that dramatic evening. The news of the Vance family scandal had filled the newspapers for weeks, but inside the mansion on the hill, the noise of the world finally faded into peace. Julian and Evelyn were safely behind bars, awaiting their final sentencing for conspiracy and attempted murder. With the stress and danger gone from his life, Arthur's health did something miraculous. He began to recover. With intense daily physical therapy, Arthur regained the use of his right side. He still walked with a silver-topped cane, but his voice had returned, low, strong, and full of authority. One sunny afternoon, we were sitting on the terrace overlooking the expansive gardens. I was no longer wearing my nurse's uniform. I was wearing a comfortable linen dress. My contract as his medical nurse had officially ended, but Arthur had asked me to stay as his personal advisor and companion. "Clara," Arthur said, taking a sip of his tea. His voice was steady now. "For years, I built factories, bought companies, and chased wealth. I thought my legacy was the money in the bank. But when I was lying in that bed, unable to move, I realized that wealth means nothing if you are surrounded by sharks." I smiled, looking at the blooming roses. "You found out who your real friends were, Arthur." "I found one real friend," he corrected softly, looking at me with deep gratitude. "You didn't just save my life, Clara. You saved my faith in humanity. You could have taken a bribe from Evelyn, or you could have run away to protect yourself. Instead, you stood by an old man who had no voice." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a legal document, placing it on the table between us. "I am changing the structure of the Vance Foundation," Arthur explained. "It will no longer focus on corporate acquisitions. It is now the Vance Clara Medical Research and Protection Fund. We are going to build hospitals, fund free nursing programs, and create systems to protect vulnerable elderly patients from people like Evelyn." My eyes welled with tears as I looked at the document. At the top of the page, my name was listed as the permanent co-director of the foundation, with an independent share of the Vance estate. "Arthur, this is too much," I whispered. "I was just doing my job." "No, Clara," Arthur said, placing his hand over mine. His grip was warm and full of life. "You gave me a second chance at life. This is my way of making sure your courage changes the world." I looked out at the bright horizon. I had started this journey as a simple private nurse carrying a medical kit into a dark house. Now, I was standing at the dawn of a new empire, one built not on greed or secrets, but on loyalty, justice, and trust. 1 year later, the final court verdict arrived. Evelyn and Julian were sentenced to 15 years in a federal prison. The justice system had worked perfectly, and the Vance name was finally clean. To celebrate his complete health recovery and the official launch of our new medical foundation, Arthur decided to host a grand gala at the mansion. It was the first time in over a decade that the Great Hall was filled with light, music, and the sound of genuine laughter. Hundreds of doctors, nurses, and community leaders attended, all gathering to support our mission. During the middle of the evening, Arthur stepped onto the grand staircase and tapped his glass with a silver spoon. The ballroom grew quiet as everyone turned to look at him. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Arthur said, his voice echoing with strength and clarity. 1 year ago, I was trapped in my own body, unable to speak, while the people I trusted tried to steal everything I built. The world thought I was finished, but a single person refused to give up on me. He looked down the stairs and caught my eye. He signaled for me to walk up and join him. The crowd parted, clapping warmly as I walked up the marble steps in a beautiful emerald gown. "This is Clara," Arthur continued, putting his arm around my shoulder. "She was my nurse, but she became my protector and my partner. Today, I am proud to announce that our foundation has officially funded its first 10 free clinics for elderly care across the country. And it is all thanks to her courage." The applause was deafening. I looked out at the sea of smiling faces, my heart full of joy. I remembered the dark night I had stood outside Arthur's bedroom door, trembling with fear. Doing the right thing had been terrifying, but looking at the good we were doing now, it was worth every single second. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the house was quiet once more, Arthur and I sat in the library by the fireplace. He handed me a small, sealed parchment envelope. "What is this, Arthur?" I asked, looking at my name written on the front in his elegant script. "It is my true will, Clara," Arthur said softly, his eyes reflecting the warm glow of the fire. "Not the one Evelyn tried to forge, and not the one Julian wanted to steal. This is the real one. I have left the entire Vance estate and the leadership of the foundation completely to you when my time eventually comes. I know that with you, my life's work will always be used to protect the helpless." I looked at the envelope, then at the kind old man who had become like a father to me. I didn't care about the billions or the grand estate. I cared about the trust we had built. "I won't let you down, Arthur," I whispered, tears of gratitude shining in my eyes. The story was over. The silent museum on the hill was now a house of hope, and the nurse who had arrived with nothing but a medical kit was now the guardian of a billionaire's true legacy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Storyline English. See you next time.